Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to episode I have no idea for Did You Know That? So, I'm looking forward to today. It's been obviously every 2 weeks we're doing this. So, boom, I made a dog. Wonderful, fabulous, excellent. So I'm going to change a little bit of things up here. Instead of doing things about printing, unfortunately, I've had a lot of stuff going on this week, and I haven't been able to prep the files that I wanted to show you guys for printing. So we're actually still doing a Did You Know That? And the fact that a colleague here came to me, I'd say yesterday or the day before, and said, "Hey, Paul, how would you make something like these microphones inside of ZBrush?" So I'm gonna make this for you guys today, and I want to show you a couple techniques that I actually would use. Hi, Julie. Excuse me, sorry. Howdy, everyone. Joanne, Martyr Connor. Okay. No, my UI is just like this because I got a brand new monitor. It's a 4K. So streaming wise, I have to do adjustment things because it won't capture it right. I didn't have time because I just hooked this monitor up this week, so I haven't had time to look at all the adjustments. So, but that's why my UI is right now looking a little bit. I changed my button size in essence. What I did, I came in here in my preferences, and I went in my interface and came here and see I made my button size 68. Default's 42. So I'm just making my buttons and text bigger. That's all. And that's why it's looking the way it is, because now I'm on a big 4K display. Okay? So, like I said, we're going to make this thing today, like iteration of something, a microphone like this, because it was just a conversation we started having. So I'm going to show you a bunch of different techniques and a bunch of different features of how maybe I would go about doing this microphone. Okay, and some different techniques of maybe doing something like this, and I'll show you guys some ZModeler stuff that I would do to do something like this. It'll be fun, all right? So just buckle up anyways, and you're going to have some fun here with my wonderful jokes and enjoy, okay? So obviously, I'm not going to use a dog, but I wanted to just have something to start. So what is nice now is we have our primitives, and you're going to see the last one is actually a capsule, which is perfect, okay, for this particular microphone. Okay, that works pretty good for us, right? So you're going to be able to just use this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on our gizmo. So I'm just hitting the W key because I'm just switching to move on the top. And then now if I tap on the capsule, that's what I get. Okay, so this is now, in essence, the start of what I'm looking for, right? So I'm going to now see where the gizmo's sitting and where the capsule's sitting. Right, I'm going to come out of perspective so we can see straight on orthographic view. I'm going to use the gizmo to, in essence, recenter this capsule. I don't have to do this, but I'm just showing you stuff so you know how to do certain things as well. So I'm going to click on this centering icon. I like to call the old like MapQuest icon. Okay. So then you have this right here. Okay. And then now I'm going to hit the home button and then see now it moves to the home. So this is the point of that home button, is to move a mesh back to 000 part of the world. Or if you had more something like this, and now if I hold the Alt key, I just want to move the gizmo back to the 000 part of the world. As long as I'm in unlock state, I can do that, right? So I'm in lock state, so I'm telling it first to center and then hit it to home, and now this is sitting at the center of the home. It's not that important, but I wanted to show that so people understand, because this will come up a lot. So the first thing I want to do is look at this piece and say, okay, what are we trying to make? I'm trying to make a microphone, kind of like we're seeing here. So I'm just going to duplicate this. I love how it's called dog. Let's rename it mic 1, mic 2. Check 1, check 2. All right. So Mike Orange. Okay, so we've got both of them here. So what I want to do now is I want to use ZModeler to do something because I want to start getting something like this. I want to show a couple techniques to how to do specifically. I like this one. I kind of want to do the one with these little holes everywhere. So I want to show you guys a couple different techniques to do this. Okay. So here you go. How to make a microphone from a dog. As ZBrush. Perfect. Done, right? From dog to capsule. So I'm switching to my handy dandy ZModeler brush. And what I want to do first is I want to put more spans here in the middle because there's not enough spans going in the middle there. Okay. And you know what? Actually, before we even get to this, let me show you another way that you guys could go about even making this capsule, actually. Okay. So just let's experiment a little bit. And I'm feeling good about this. So I'm going to go to initialize, and let's cut this way down our spans here. So we're just cutting our spans. Let's see what 24 by 24 looks like. That's pretty good. That's not bad. You know, let's go even lower. Let's go 12. Oh yeah, by 12. Okay, that's a little crazy now. Now I'm getting nut. Now I'm overkilling it here. Let's keep this one maybe. We'll keep that one around 20. I say that's good enough. Whatever. Okay. Now I'm gonna make this a poly mesh, and now that I have this, right, in essence, to make the capsule, if I really wanted to, I could go back into the gizmo. Okay. Okay, I'm just reading the going. What is the point today? What are you showing to us? I'm going to show you guys how all the techniques, different techniques to make something like this, the microphone, get all like these little holes that you want. Maybe do this little brace right in here as well. So I'm going to show you this little screw in there. I'm going to show you a different technique I would use for that. And then something like this to create the general shape. I would probably even switch to extender. Okay, and then now you can just use the extender, and then there's your capsule shape. Right, so this is another way just to create that capsule shape, is just using this extender plugin, right, to do that. And then there you go. Now I got that capsule shape, right? So you could go about it this way, right? Or you can go about it the way that I started like this, which was from the brush itself. Okay? So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to switch to insert multiple edges. Okay, and I'm going to just start inserting edges to what I want to get to. Maybe that looks pretty. There, that looks good. So I got relatively the same size polygons. Now, the one thing to remember about multiple edge, which is cool, is this interactive elevation, right? So you guys can click and you can start doing stuff like this. I can go inward and do things like this, which is pretty powerful and a lot of fun to do. And then you guys have 4 different ways to have this doing. So if I can say flat, right, you're going to do this, and then you're just getting a flat. So obviously if I go in, I can do something like that. Okay, and then you can switch and go radial, and it'll have more of a radial, like a spherical look to it, right? And then I can go linear, and then now do something like this. Right, and again, if I go inward, I get this. So all I'm doing is up and down, adding spans. Left and right is changing, in essence, that elevation of what's happening with the spans. Okay, so I don't want to do any of this. I'm just going to go, you know what, I don't need any elevation. So this is the default. So again, I'm just adding spans here to get, I'm going to say that's good. I'm going to repolygroup all this so it's just one. So I'm just hitting Control W. And now what I want to do is I want to use nanomesh. Okay, this is one way I'm going to show you how to do this. So nanomesh can come in very handy for us. So I'm going to go back to, say, this primitive brush again. So we have all these primitives, right? So if you're looking, this is one, right? Here's another one that we have. This one just has geometrical spans going through it, right? And then here's another one that we have that's different, okay? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell ZBrush to turn this insert mesh brush into a nano. Okay, so obviously the fast and easy way to do this, okay, is go to B for brush and right down here create nanomesh. So whatever insert mesh brush is selected, I'm going to go ahead and beep, pop that in, and now any one of these can be used as a nano. So you can see now I can hover over the face and I can draw this out. Now the benefit to this is when we get into this nano world, nano, we're going to have a whole menu for it, right? So as I draw this out, you can see now everything comes alive. And I'm definitely going to use this to my benefit, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, spacebar, it's insert nano, but I'm going to say all polygons. Like put it on every single polygon for this piece as an example. So now when I click, this is what I get, right? So now I'm getting those nanos. So I can adjust the size. Let's say probably looks like maybe let's start with 0.3. Looks pretty good. All right. The rotation is set to a -15 right now. We don't need that, so we can put that as a 0. So I'm now having all these settings. So I want to start creating something a little bit more like that. So this is nice. We're starting to get somewhere. But what I actually want to do is I want to tile this. So I'm going to tile it twice horizontal, and I'm going to tile twice vertical. So in essence, what I'm doing is now each face is getting 4 of those pieces, which is great. That's giving me a little bit more, so it's giving me more like density that I have there. Okay? So, by the way, the key to open the ZModeler menu is spacebar. Yes, it is. Yep, you're right on the money. So what I'm going to do is now go here and say the pattern, how about we make it checkered odd? And now we're getting what we want. We're getting a lot closer to this. Now, the one thing I want you to pay attention, you might not notice it right now. It's a tough look, and it's tough to see. This area right in here, right? So you can see these are all pretty much the same, and then see in there they're not, right? So there's different normal changing happening. So this is all based upon your alignment. So all I have to do now is go to my alignment here, and I can say, how about aligning along normal? How about short edge? There you go. That solved the problem. So now they're all aligned the same way that I would want them, right? And you can do a long edge, you can do near edge, you can do point order, randomness if you want to, or no alignment at all. So obviously I want short edge or long edge, something like this is what I would want, right? Because that's giving me exactly what I'm trying to get to here, except now it just looks like a microphone with pinheads, right? So looking at this, the beauty of this right now is I am staying very low geometrically, right? I'm only at 418 polygons. So this is great. What I want to do now is I want to use these nanos with live Boolean. Okay, so what's going to become important for me is this shape that I'm using, right? This little cylinder shape. I actually want to edit it a little bit. I want to change it up a bit. So I'm actually going to go say here and say edit mesh. And what this does is now gives me this mesh again to start manipulating and playing with. Okay, so I'm going to say, you know what, I want it a little bit longer. Okay, so this is, boom, I can make that longer, come back, and now this is longer now, right? And if I look at my offsetting, right, I can play with my offsets like in the Z here, and you can see what's happening. So I can put it lower and higher. Now, what I want to do on top of this is, okay, I want to use these nanos to also not only cut into the surface, but let's use them a little bit to put some kind of little beveling edge around the surface as well. Okay, that's also what I'm looking to do. So having the capability to edit the mesh really opens this up for me. Okay, so I'm going to go back to edit the mesh, and now I have something like this. I'm going to say, all right, we already are in this insert nano, which actually is just a new ZModeler brush. When you create an insert nano, you're creating, in essence, a new ZModeler brush. That's what you're doing, okay? So I'm going to say, let's Q mesh this now along the poly loop, okay? And I'm going to say, let's pull this out maybe to there. Let's do the same thing over here. So all I got to do is tap, and then that's what it does, right? And I can even now pull out, say something like we can do that, and then now I want the same thing there, right? And then this is what I'm looking to have happen to my mesh, right? And I don't even need, if I wanted to, I don't even need all these spans in here. Realistically, I don't need them, right? So I'm going to say this looks good. I like the looks of it, right? Polygrouping is going to become important for us to experiment with for sure. Now I'm going to edit mesh, and now you can see the update has been done. So what I want to do is this portion right here, I kind of want it to intersect a little bit with what we're looking at, right? So I want to turn on dynamic subdiv. So I'm still dealing with 418 polygons, and all I've done is use the shortcut here in dynamic and turned it on. So which the shortcut is D and then Shift D to turn it off, right? So then I'm telling it to show me right here how many levels to look at, this smooth subdiv levels, okay? So you can see down here, these nanos, what we're creating, and now I'm going to play with this offset a little bit and say maybe something right about there. Let's go maybe a negative 0.222. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. That's not bad. I'm liking the looks of it. I'm liking the looks of that. So I'm using nano to help me create this. So we can go a little bit, maybe negative 0.2. Let's take a look at that. That's a little, I think that's might be a little bit better. We'll go a little bit in. So we'll go in negative. I'm just looking at my overall everything where I'm looking to seeing what I get. Okay. So I'm happy with this now. This looks good to me. So all I'm going to do now is tell down in inventory here. I'm going to say 1 to mesh. So this is going to convert the nano into actual geometry. So you can see now this just jumped up to 278,000 polygons, right? So I want to use the polygrouping now. Remember I said polygrouping was going to be crucial for us, because what I want to do is separate these. So we can use polygrouping to do this for sure, or, you know, in the subtool, the split options here, you have split to parts, and you have split to similar parts. All right, and because all those cylinders are the same, if I hit split to similar parts, right, automatically what it's going to do, it's going to look at like the green pill or microphone part, and then it's going to look at all the other little pieces and then see split them apart. So now these are their own subtool, and then this is back to being its own subtool. Okay, so if I move this down, and let's rename this, we'll name this nanomesh, nano. Okay, we have that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a start menu, right? We have a start menu here and here. I'm going to use this as a negative, all right? I'm going to turn on dynamic subdiv so I can kind of see what's going to happen here with this. And then I'm going to go now to live booleans and turn that on, and then there you go. We've got our little microphone, and right, and see the little beveling right in here that I'm doing? That's because I've added that bevel in there. So then we can, obviously you might want to have this smooth so you can see what is that going to look like smooth, right? So you can also smooth this up if you want to, right? So you would turn on dynamic as well here. Again, we're turning on dynamic, and I say give me more smoothness, and then that's our microphone, right? So that's what I'm trying to achieve right there for something like that. So this is one way, okay? Yeah, you can definitely model a lot of things like you can in Maya. Just remember though, we're sculpting, it's a sculpting application, so the one thing ZBrush does not allow is n-gons, because you can't sculpt on an n-gon. So when you're using ZModeler, yeah, you can do this, definitely a lot of things that you can in Maya, but you got to look at it and getting idea that n-gons is not an option. Okay, but there's ways to get around all this for sure. Right? So this is one way, okay, to go about this, right? So we're using live boolean. So let's look at another way to do this. Okay, so we'll put this smoothed, right? And I'm not even touching all the spans in there, but maybe you do. Maybe you want to insert some spans. So see, it just equally distributes it, right? So this is clearly too many spans, right? So maybe I do again something like that, right? I'll Control W that, and then now I just have a more smoother surface because now there's more spans in here. So the other way to go about this would be use surface noise. Okay, so this is going to give us the capability to do things like this, right? Which is using this graph right now to do things, right? What I want to do is use an image. So right here, my alpha on off, okay? I want to click on that and then go and grab an image. So I'm going to say load an image like this. So now I got an image that has, in essence, offsetting black and white, right? So now I want to say, do I want these two noises to be working together? So right now, because I have this noise in here and this noise in here, we are mixing between the two. So you can even say minimum, and you can see it only goes in the black area. You can say max, and now it doesn't go in the black circled area, right? And then now I would start making this go a lot smaller to the size that I would want. Something like this. Okay? So I would start working on this capability here, right? And then if I don't want the mixing to happen, I just turn this down, and then now I can play with this strength, right? And then hit OK, and the only thing now I'm getting is the image. Now if I want to see what this is going to look like if I actually apply, I hit Shift R, which is rendering, right? So I'm running this, and then that's what it'll look like if I was to apply this noise. So if you start looking, we got this happening, right? I definitely don't like what's happening there. So what I want to do is, looking again at this mic, I don't actually need the entire pill look thing, right? So what I'm going to do is say, I need maybe about that much. Maybe we'll go maybe that much. This is how much we need, okay? So I'm just doing a visual thing, right? I'm selecting out, okay? And if I want to grow out my selection, I'm holding down Control and Shift and hitting X, okay? And an X, and it's just expanding that selection. That's all I'm doing, okay? So this is enough for what I'm trying to accomplish in some microphones like this, right? So I'm going to go Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden, and now what I'm left with is just this top half, all right? And what I want to do, since I don't have any subdivision levels, I'm just looking at the dynamic version. I'm going to tell ZBrush, hey, you know what? In the plugins, let's use UV Master, and let's just unwrap this. Let's throw some UVs on this now. Okay, so now that this has UVs, I can go back to my surface, okay, edit this, and go right here, instead of doing 3D, do based upon your UVs. So you can see I am getting now a lot better result here, right? And I'm looking, again, my colleague's looking to do this for the purpose of making an image like this, actually, is the ultimate goal. So now you have something like this that you can then say Shift R and render this out. So this is a way to use surface noise to do this, right? And of course, if I do a dynamic subdiv, you'll start seeing a little bit better of the result of what's going to happen. Now, you could do this. If we go back on the surface noise, let's turn off the image, and let's use the noise plugin instead, okay? And in here, we have a spheres right here to use, okay? And you can stagger them if you want, right? And then you got a size, and if you want to hollow them out, we can do that. So let's take a look what this looks like. So this now has a plugin scale, and then there's that. And I can say, you know what, I want it to go in, and maybe let's go a little bit bigger, like this. I can say, you know what, let's edit this, and maybe you want to have a little bit in the middle. Maybe you want to, I don't know, maybe you want to do something like this. Maybe it's a sci-fi mic and you're doing your own, right? So this is another way to do this. So I'm just holding Shift R, and then I can render it out, and I can see what that would look like if I applied this surface noise to my microphone piece, in essence. Okay, so those are and that's 3 different ways. You can use nanomesh to get to something like this, and then I'm showing 2 different ways with the noise plugin. Okay? So, I'm gonna stick with I like this one. I like the one with this one. I'm just liking this because then I prefer it. All right, so let's get rid of this one. We don't need this anymore. Okay, and I'm going to now use this again, but let's grab that one and duplicate this, and let's move it down. So now that I'm using something like live booleans, this is where my start menus come into play. So right now, okay, this has got a start menu. So this is saying there's a number 3 right there because it's saying this subtool, and this subtool is going to give me the result, right? So this is my main subtool for this particular start menu. And it's saying use this, I have set as a negative to go in this, so that's why we're getting the holes. But now I have this also set as a union. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this arrow so this has its own start menu. Because what I want to do is use this same piece to start create the bottom half of our mic, right? I want to start creating that nice little shell, okay? So what I'm going to do now is say, all right, let's continue to go about this. So one thing I do want to show with this, since we're here, is this auto collapse. I don't think many people are playing with this, but you guys might find this useful. So if you click this, you guys can actually collapse the start groups. So if I want to open up just that one, I click on it, see it only opens up that start group. If I click on it, closes it, and then this has only got 1 item in it right now. So there's not really much to collapse. So this auto collapse can come in handy for you. Okay? It's up to you. So see now all the subtools are like this, right? So if you collapse, all you can do is you can click now. But if I turn on auto collapse, clicking on the start groups opens and closes it now. And you can open and close one at a time. So as we move on here, we'll see how that comes in even more handy. Okay? So I've got this piece right here, right? And we're looking at saying, all right, I want to use this to work with what I have going on. So I don't need the top half, right? I definitely don't need this. I'm going to say, how far do I want to go down? So that looks pretty good. I'm right. You know, actually, let's go that. I want to make this a little bit longer. Okay? So I'm going to say, I'm all right with that. That looks great. So I'm going to say, let's go down to my geometry, and let's do a delete hidden. So I'm just hiding the top half, and I'm doing a delete hidden. Okay? Now I have this. So if I want to even extend this more, right, I can do something like this, right, this is unmasking. This is a new feature of 4.8 that I love, okay, which you guys, those that are users right now that are in ZBrush, so who's not ever used ZBrush before that's watching right now? Raise your hand, raise it high, wave like I just don't care, or put a little thing in the chat there that you've never used. So you're so new to ZBrush. Okay, we got one person already saying they're so new to ZBrush. Right, so I'm from the year 3018. Thanks. I love it. So what's new to 4.8, which I love, normally you would make a mask like this. So I'm just holding the control key and click and dragging a box. So these faces here are masked, right? And then I could inverse this, hit the W key, and now see I can do this kind of thing, right? Clearly I want the opposite. I want this, so maybe if you guys want to even extend the microphone, it'd be something, maybe that's what you're looking for. A little bit more like this, which I actually do like better. I like, it's getting back that kind of pill shape, which they are more of like a pill shape. So I prefer that look. Okay, but what I was pointing out here is you guys can also now do this. Instead of doing that, so if I'm snapping my fingers, I'm no longer holding the keyboard, right? So I can move this around. All right, and I can hold the space bar, move it. That's the point. I don't have to, once the mask brush is going, I don't need to hold the hand anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Alt key instead, and then what that does is whatever's not in the box becomes unmasked, and then everything else is masked at the top, right? And so now I can get that little length maybe that I'm trying to do here, and I want something that looks more like that. And a lot of times I like to hide my mask, and then I can see the overall. Yeah, I like that. That looks good. I'm happy with that. Perfect. Perfect. So what this is also setting me up for is this piece right here that I'm going to make eventually, right? So maybe what I'll do is I'll use this edge right here that we already have, and maybe use that as like a gauge to, okay, how thick do I want it? Do I want it to be this thick, or do I want it to be this thick? Right, so I'm going to go and say, let's switch to slide and do a complete edge loop. So again, I'm hovering over an edge. I'm in like a Z modeler brush. I'm holding spacebar. I'm switching the slide and complete edge loop. And now I can just visually go, I want it. No, that's too thick. I'm going to go that thick with it. I'm cool with that. That looks good. All right. So we're starting to create that bottom. Now let's go ahead and say, let's do a little bit more with this. Let's hover over a face. Switch to our spacebar. I've got Q mesh. Let's just do all polygons, and then this will give me some thickness now. So there you go. I've got now a little bit of thickness happening here, right? Because I need that to have some thickness, so it looks like the microphone's sitting in this, right? So when I hit the D key to look at it smooth, this is what we're making. Now, I don't like what's happening at this upper lip edge, so if I wanted to look at this, right? I can say, you know what? I want to crease these edges up here, right? So this is where it's beneficial to come out of and in dynamic subdiv. You can really play with this, okay? And I'm going to say, you know what? Let's switch to crease. Let's do a complete edge loop, and I can tap this and tap that. And then when I hit the D key, right, this is now what we have. So maybe I want an edge a little bit more like that, which is fine, but I actually want to soften that edge a little bit. Okay, I'm looking to do an edge softening there. So I'm going to go over here, right? I'm going to go into my creasing menu because I just creased that. So there's multiple ways to crease. So I just used a brush. You guys could use this tolerance. So if I undo the creasing, right? So this is without the crease. I can even just use this tolerance slider with this crease button. I could do this and say anything 45 degrees and over, crease it. So when I click crease, you can see, boom. And this is the beauty of dynamic subdiv. I can see the result happening, so I know. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, I could do that way, or you can sit here and say, how about crease by PG, which stands for polygrouping, not Paul Gaboury. But I'm going to go with it. Darn it, I'm taking it. Okay? So this is the capability, all right, to be able to do something like this. Okay? So now I have that, but what I want to do is I want to change my crease level here. So I have a crease level of 2 now. All right? And now you have that. Okay? And then I want to come here, up here to dynamic, and say maybe let's look at it in 4 subdivisions, and now you see that gets smooth. That's a lot more realistic happening. Okay? So now I have a nice little chamfering edge happening in there. Okay? And then this is, I'm pretty happy with where this is at now. I'm good to go. I'm feeling it. I like it. Okay? And I now want to continue this process. So I saw somebody brought something up in chat. So let me do this. So let me answer that question since it came up. All right. So when you guys are now working in ZBrush, right, and you have lazy mouse, you have this now capability. This is a new feature which I use a lot, especially for if I want to do something like if I say even grab one of these brushes and I want to do this, I can now do angles like this. This was not possible before. Okay? So what's controlling this and what's helping control this is this slider right here as well. Okay? So this is kind of like a snapping capability. So if you guys want to do that, you can do this. But lazy mouse now always has this line. So in order to not have that line now, you have to come out of lazy mouse, and then there you can draw a straight line while holding the shift key. Okay, so you have to come out of lazy mouse now to do something like that. Because the minute you turn on lazy mouse, all right, and then click and hold the shift key, you're going to get now this line capability here to do this. So to do what you did in previous versions, you will have to come out of lazy mouse to do that. But then this snapping is also going to come very beneficial, especially if I did something like I store a morph target, right? And I start doing stuff like this, and then I start doing that, right? And then now I can move my mesh and see I can continue the stroke, right? And even because I have a morph target, I can go over top as many times as I want as well, and it's all got the same depth. So this is all part of what's new to the new lazy mouse options. Okay, so this new slider is allowing it to snap wherever that last stroke took off. You can actually continue it, which this is all also leading into why you have the shift key capability, because now I can do stuff like this and then do that, and then now hold the shift key and do this. So it's about having now a continuous stroke. So I can even keep moving around, right? So even if I'm doing this, I can rotate around the model and just continuing my stroke as I go. Now, if I'm going to do something like this, and for me, I'm using a pen, so my pressure is changing the way the stroke is interacting with the surface. So I would definitely come down here, okay, look at your tablet pressure, and you can see that size based upon my pressure can be different. I'd probably want that to be consistent, so I'd probably want to turn it up all the way. So that way, no matter now what pressure I use, it's the same exact consistent width and height when I started and when I'm not started. So this is all part of that new lazy mouse, because now I can do boom, do that if I wanted to, and then come across. So that's why we did what we did. Okay? So there you go for that. Let me come back to my handy dandy little microphone that we're making here. All right, now let's continue on our design. I want to put a little bit more design in this. Okay, so along here, these little spans, they both kind of have something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and add something so like that too. So I'm going to switch back to a Z modeler. I'm going to say slide this complete edge loop up. Let's say something like this. Maybe, yeah, that looks good. I'm good with that. Okay. And then I'm going to say, I want to now, in this point right here, okay, I want to maybe add some edge looping. Okay, so I'm looking at just this part right in here, right? And then you can see there's an inner shell also. So this is not matching now the outside, as you can see, which really isn't a big deal, right? Because we could Q-mesh after the fact. So what I mean by that is you can do this and fix it later if you want that same geometry inside. In fact, we'll do it. Let's do it on purpose. Okay? So I'm going to say let's insert multiple edge loops again and do this, right? So I want to insert multiple edges like that. So what I want to have happen, okay, is create maybe something like this. Maybe I like that 3-line effect that's happening in there. Okay, and then now I can say QMesh polygroup all, and I can either pull it out, make a new polygroup, or push it in and make a new polygroup. Right, so then this is what we have now. So now if I smooth that, there's where we're at this point. And then of course, if I want to crease it, I can do that for my creasing, and now I got a model like that. All right, so as I was saying, this thickness might not be right for you, right? So even after the fact, okay, these have new polygroups, so I can grab these two polygroups, right? So this is all I'm looking at now is this outside part, right? So I can come down here and I can say delete hidden, and now we have no thickness at all here, okay? And I can come back and say we can Q-mesh, I can say all polygons, and I can push things in, right? And what I'm doing is I can push them out, I can push them in, right? I can even do the same thing with the extrude, and I can say all polygons and push it in, right? So this is, you can see your thickness. So what's happening is the normals are flipped, Okay, so down here in your display properties, if you ever ran into this, you can just say flip your normals, and then there you go. And then you can see you have now this same geometry inside. So even after the fact, I can still fix up some things, which I found myself doing quite a bit, right? And then maybe in here, maybe you want to start maybe putting a little bevel. So I can throw a bevel in here and say, I want a little bit bevel like that. Okay, I want the same bevel there, same bevel there, same bevel there, same bevel there, right? What does that look like smooth? That's what it looks like smooth. Come back to geometry and let's see what it looks like creased. I like it creased better, so I'm going to stick with that. Okay, so in essence, what we've got is that bottom piece. We've got that piece going there. Let me see, there was a question. Same polygon for all the same meshes I placed. It'll have its own poly grouping. When you do an insert mesh brush, you can actually store the poly grouping within the insert mesh brush. Okay? So that is 100% possible. So like whatever I'm playing with, if I now switch to an insert mesh here, right, and I start inserting things like this, see, they get their own, they're going to have their own polygroup and whatever the stored polygroup is. So if we switch to something like this, right, this might have, see, that's only got one, that's only got one, right? But I know for a fact, let's see, we go into our brushes here, then let's load the train, right? These pieces, right, will also have their own polygrouping as well. And if there was anything that I wanted to have different polygroup, okay, you can do that. So here, let me turn this off. So you can see this has its own polygrouping because this particular insert part of the mesh, we stored it with those polygroups. You have to store it with the polygroups, right? So if you don't have any polygroups on the insert mesh brush, and then it's only going to draw out one, and that's it. So all that can absolutely store with insert mesh brushes, but it depends on to when you're creating it, what you're doing. Okay? So hopefully that answers that question. So you're saying, you're asking now if you're inserting, say if I'm inserting this and this little sphere here, right? And you're doing this, right? You want them all to be the same polygroup, right? Okay, that's just doing based upon how it's just inserting, it's assigning a different polygroup based upon the number of items that are being inserted. But that's a super easy fix as well. You can just come down here to polygrouping, right? And then you can do merge similar groups, right? And then this will evaluate and start looking at these and start trying to put these in the same polygrouping, right? There's merge stray groups and then there's merge similar groups, right? So you'll be able to look into this and just obviously click these as well and do the polygroup. So you're talking about this. I have multiple pieces right now. Right? It's just inserting and creating a different polygroup with every insert. That's all. That's just what it's doing when it has a single polygroup. So because it's assigning a new ID in essence. So every time you're drawing out, it's assigning a new polygroup ID. Okay, so continuing on, I want to start now. Okay, I've got a little bit of some of this. I want to create this part on the top. So if you remember, I started doing that with this piece up here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to switch on solo. So I'm just looking at this, right? And I'm going to switch back to a Z modeler brush, and I'm going to Q mesh the poly loop. All right, and then now I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to hold the control key and assign another hotkey, a polygroup at the same time. So what this is doing is ripping off that whole poly loop around there, right? So now I have this piece to add some thickness to it if I want, and then there's that little ring that I have going around. Okay, and if I want to, I can switch to extrude, and go poly loop as well, and then push this in, right? So you can push this in right here, or I could even just switch to move poly loop, and I can push this in so it's looking at this, and then now this is asking you how along the normal, along the axis, things like this, right? So I tend to use QMesh to do this, but you can use extrude as well, right? So I can do this, and then now that's got an inner shell, so it's intersecting with that. And of course now I can look at this smooth, and then this is what we have. Right? And of course now I want to manipulate this and go back to my creasing, and I can say maybe crease by polygroup, and now I have something like that, which I can adjust with and play with as well. Right? So if I want to change the height, it's just all about masking. Right? I can even select out this one portion, right? I can mask out this. I'm going to show everything again. I'm going to inverse, and then now I can use the gizmo and say maybe I want that to be a little bit wider or a little bit skinnier, right? It's really up to where I think the design is going. And now if I turn everything on, we're starting to create this look, right? So this is clearly pretty thick in here, right? So maybe I don't want it this thick, right? So maybe I can Q-mesh this, and here's how I can use Q-mesh. Instead of Q-meshing out like this, I can hold the Shift key and do something like that. And then now it's not as thick going around. Okay, so now I have that happening for me. Okay. So the difference again, to remember, extrude doesn't have snapping capability. Q-mesh is a very unique thing, right? So if we go to here and here, we initialize. Let's make this a mesh, and we'll make a cube, right? So the difference being, everybody, okay, is if I'm Q-meshing, right, I can pull something out. And if I was to pull this out, see, it snaps. So even if I was to insert, say, even a single edge here, it's going to snap it, and I can do this, right? Even to the point if I did something like this and like that, I can push this through and make a hole, and ZBrush will close everything off for you. Now, if I did that with an extrude, okay, you're going to get different result. See? So you got flipped faces. That face is still there. So you're creating geometry that is not ideal. Then, of course, if you start pulling on this, right, you've got coplanar sit in there now. So if you smooth this, you can see there's two faces in there. So this is the difference between using extrude and Q-mesh. Q-mesh is going to close this off, and then now if I smooth this, you can see that's all connected. So this is why I switched in this particular example. I switched to extrude because I didn't want it to snap inward. Okay? So moving on now, we're going to say, all right, let's turn on symmetry. All right? So you know what symmetry mode you're on here as well. And I'm going to say, okay, on this side, all right, in here maybe, I want to start creating this piece, right? So I'm going to do a temporary polygroup here, right? So I'm going to say I want a Q-mesh and single polygon. I'm going to hold the Alt key to tap on this temporary polygroup here. So I'm going to switch to solo mode so I'm not looking at the live Boolean right now. So this is what I have. And I'm going to do pretty much the same thing that we did to create this, right? I'm going to click on this, but hold the Control key. And I'm going to have a little gap in there because I need a little bit of a gap happening. Okay? And now I have this. I'm going to say, all right, let's switch to polygroup all and create a little bit of that. So this is going to start becoming that base that I want to create that's wrapping around here. Right? And then now I'm going to say, you know what? Let's temporary. Sorry, I'm clicking the third button on my pen. And let's Q-mesh this down. Right? And this will start giving me something like this. Okay, so I'm just creating that simple shape and base that we're looking for. Right? And if I want to flatten this, I can get rid of that edge loop, and now I have a flat version of this if I wanted to. Okay, but for now, I'm just going to keep it curved because that's easy to update down the line. Right? So I'm going to say, you know what? It needs to go further down. So there's that handy dandy unmasking capability. So I'm going to do something like this. Okay? And then I'm going to say I need now for the bend to happen in here. So let's go ahead and let's delete these faces. Okay, here I'm going to turn on display properties double just so you can see what's happening. So I've deleted those two faces on both sides. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is tell ZBrush, all right, these are two holes. So let's use them. So I'm going to switch from an edge and I'm going to say bridge. And I'm going to bridge two holes. Now it's what do I want? Let's look at maybe small round corners. Maybe that's the look I want. So I click on this one, and then I come over here and click on this one, and then I can start doing this. Right? So left and right, up and down. Up and down, it's adding me the spans that I need to make this shape happen. Right? And then left and right is changing the over. So this is pretty good. I like round corners. That's pretty much what I want here, right? So I don't need this many spans, so that's probably good enough. And then there you have that. Right? And then I can say, how about, let's look at something else. Maybe tight round corners. I don't know. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm just finding the one that I want. Right? Maybe I prefer that one. It's my world. There. Okay? So you figure out which one I want. And don't forget, we're going to smooth this. Right? So this is going to look a little different, smoothed, of course. Okay, so you can't forget that we're going to have that smoothing happening. Okay, and then now, this is also nothing to continue to edit. I can now say, let's mask off, right? All these sides like this, right? And then now I can even adjust this height and put it maybe more like this. And to say, that's what, I'm good with that. I like that. Okay, so this is maybe that cradling piece that I prefer to have, right? I don't know if I like tight corners. I think it's a little too tight. So let's look at arcs. Maybe arcs would be cool to use. Oh yeah, arcs pretty cool. So you can get something more like that. I kind of like what this one's happening here. So I think I'm liking small round corners the best for me. Okay, so I'm clicking that edge. And now see ZBrush says click the second edge and it's expand. So I'm going to say that's enough. Yeah, I prefer that. All right, and then now I'm going to adjust my height because I want this to be a little bit closer to the bottom of that microphone. Right, and there you have it. Now if we turn everything back on, you can see where we're going with this now. We're starting to have a nice little idea thought here for a microphone. Okay. So, of course, when I smooth this, I don't like the results. So let's go back to our handy dandy creasing in here. Let's throw a little crease, and then that looks a lot better. I prefer that. That's giving it some volume. Okay, it's rounding, it's fitting that. And then you can decide now, maybe you don't want that. So let's go to Insert right here, right? And then hold the Alt key, and you can delete. So what I want to do is delete this edge right here. Right, that edge right there. So here, I'll turn this off. So this edge right here. And then now this is going to give you, obviously, a different looking shape a little bit now. So I kind of like it with the roundness in there. Right? But don't forget, everybody, remember that thing I was talking about? We can do something like this, and then we, as a user, can say, let's control the elevation, and let's maybe even do something like that. Right? So now you're getting a nice roundness in there and in there. Right? So then we can play, maybe I prefer that look. Right? So it's really up to us. So I'm going to stick with this. This is working good for me. I like that. Okay? And then now I need to create, you know, maybe these little parts over here. Right? So I'm going to switch to Insert here. And I'm going to grab this primitive. I am in Primitives brush. Okay, and I'm going to grab this third one, okay, and I'm going to be drawing it out on this. So this is a nice point of reference right here, that little vertex point, okay? I want to start drawing on this, okay, but I want it on both sides. So I'm going to turn on X symmetry, and now I have this. So you can see what this is doing. It's taking on the normal, so there's an angle to this. I actually want to control this. I prefer it to draw straight on. Okay, that's what I would prefer to have happen. So I'm going to undo this. I'm going to switch to the gizmo, and you can see where my gizmo's sitting right now, right? You can see that it's facing to the world. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and click this little reset to make sure the gizmo is sitting perfect to the world axes. So now, when I draw out, if I hold the Shift key, right, this draws perfectly straight. And that's really what I want, because I want to make these little knobs right there. That's what I'm looking to make. And then because we automatically got everything masked off, I'm going to now switch to the gizmo, center it, so I'm in symmetry, so I have both, right? I'm going to now start squashing this, and you can see they're moving towards each other. This is happening because there's two gizmos in the world. So this one gizmo is squashing this way, so is this one. So this gizmo is also affecting this mesh, and then this gizmo is also affecting this mesh. So what I'm going to do is up here is I'm going to turn on local sim to tell ZBrush, don't do that. All right, and then now when I do this, I keep hitting my third button, which by the way, I love the third button pen, man. It's awesome. So I'm going to start doing things like this, right? And then that's how now I can adjust and see where do I want that knob to sit. Maybe, yeah, right about there is good. We'll adjust the size maybe a little bit. Maybe I want it to be a little bit smaller. Okay? And now we have this to start working with. Okay, so now I'm going to say let's switch to Z modeler. I'm going to say I'm going to insert a single edge. Let's do, say, something like this. And I want all of these faces here. So I'm holding the Alt key, and I'm just drawing out a temporary polygroup of what faces I want to affect, in a sense, okay? So I want to have these two faces be affected like that. So now I'm going to go QMesh, single polygon, pull it out, and then there you go. So what's going to happen is when I do this, see, I start to create that little, nice little notch. So I'm looking at this one, that little part right in there. I kind of like that. So I'm adding it to mine for sure. Okay, that looks good. Now let's continue going. All right. Let's do an insert, right? And we can do multiple edge loops. And I don't want an elevation. And I can start inserting across like this. I can do something like this if I want. I can say I can get rid of these spans if I want to do something like that. Okay? And what I want to start doing maybe is along this poly loop, I want to inset every single, so I'm insetting poly loop every single face. So that's what this little orange line tells me. So I can start doing things like this. And we'll change, tap the Alt key, changes up our poly group. So I want something like that. Okay? And now I can QMesh, right? Polygroup all, and I can pull this out. And we'll change that polygroup as well. So that's gonna, when I smooth, create something like this. Now, of course, what haven't I done yet? If I crease it, you start getting something more like that. Right? So I start creating something that looks like it has some things like that happening. Right? So you could take this approach. We could even take, what else? We could do a nano, right, if I want to, and that can duplicate it. So what I like, again, about nanos is this. So let's go to this. Let's create my own nano mesh. I'm going to nano. I like, right? I'm going to say initialize. I'm going to say just give me a 6-face cube. We'll do this, right? And I'm going to say good. I'm going to say brush. First, I'm going to create it as an insert mesh brush. I'm going to say new, brush, create nano. So now if I come back to this piece, right? Let's work backwards now. and I say nano polyloop, right? Then this is going to create the nanos. And you see I'm kind of on an angle, which we can have some fun with that. So now that I have a nanomesh here, I can say the rotation needs to be fixed. So definitely no rotation. I want that. I can play with the lengths if I want to. I can play with the width. I can play with whatever I want along this path, right? And then again, we can tile it, right? So we can have more tiles. So maybe tile what direction we want. So maybe I can even go smaller, start tiling it, maybe do this, and then also tile it this way, right? So now I have something like that, and if I can start sizing it up, I can have a look like this instead if I want to. Right, and I'm just using this nano, right? And I can offset it a little bit, raise it a little bit more, play a little bit more with the heights. Maybe say I don't want 5. Maybe I want something more like that. And then that's the look I'm going for. Right? And then I can say, maybe not 3, maybe only 2. No. Maybe what does 1 look like? Right? And then maybe this is only 2. So I'm on the fly changing what I want to have happen. So this is why I also like nano, because then I can do stuff like this and just look at what we got. So I kind of like that. I'm a bigger fan of that for sure, right? And then this is what it would look like smooth. And then these aren't smoothed yet, right? The nanos themselves are not smooth. If I go here to edit the mesh, right, and I smooth it, now it's going to be, a little bit more smoothing like that. So continuing this process, okay, I want to now continue just linking this up. So all I have to do is use this right here that we have. You see those interfaces? So let's looking at just this, right? This polygroup. I'm going to shrink it, and I can assign a new polygroup now to just that inner portion, right? So that is the only thing I'm looking at, right? So if I bring everything back, okay, I can now go here and say QMesh polygroup all and start pulling this out like this. And then this is going to be the part, right? In essence, that's doing, that's doing this. I want this to move, intersect like that. Right? So I'm just piece by piece, just going through this process and showing you guys kind of the approach I would start to take with this. Okay? So we don't have much time left because I got another meeting, but so then obviously to do this part, it's just a cylinder really, but I'm going to take a different approach to this. All right? I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm just going to duplicate it in essence. Right? So I'm going to reset this, I'll center it, and I'm just going to duplicate it down. I'm going to turn off symmetry and then recenter so that way the gizmo is sitting directly in the center. Then now, if you remember from the last time, the very beginning here, how we started with the capsule, because this is all masked off and then this isn't, I can literally just, right, switch to a gizmo and click, and then we replace it. So now you have a replaced piece. So now I can do something like that, right? And then now this is what's going to connect into this piece here. And then now I find what size do I want that to be, right? And then now it's just creating all this, right? So the easier thing for me would be to do this, say, okay, how tall do I want that to be? I'm going to say that's probably pretty good. That's good for me right there, right? And then I can say, all right, let's not only that, let's do this and let's extrude. Right? So I'm creating an extrusion here with the gizmo. Right? So what I've done is I've unmasked only the bottom faces. So everything else is masked. So if I hold control and click on the arrow, you get an extrusion that's going to happen. right? And then now this is just again using ZModeler, right? And then we're going to Q mesh, right? Polyloop, and I'm just going to start pulling that out. And that's going to start creating my base. And if I want more, I can pull out now, click again and hold the shift key, and then there's the base that I'm making. It's starting to look like a trophy. Right? So then you can start doing things like this and maybe a little bit less. Right? And then this, you can either switch to a slide and slide it down, start creating that look there. Right? You clearly want this maybe to have a little bit more thickness now. So I can Q mesh by flat island and start pulling on that and say there's some more thickness. Right? And then now, what does that look like smooth? Now it's definitely a cup. Right? And I need now to start again creasing things. Right? And then looking at, I'm going to now start adding some edge loops through here to start creating all that part within there. But again, if we're looking at this, we're starting to get a little bit something of what I'm trying to get to. Now, the one thing that is very cool to do is this little piece right here, right? So again, if we're coming back to this, right, what I want to do is this. So I got this little bottom piece, right? So we're going to rename, we'll just rename it bottom, all right? And yeah, this will be in Druss's backyard for sure, for those that know the joke. So let's you do this. Let's append something. It doesn't matter what it is. It's irrelevant. It's just something, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this so it's sitting kind of just inside. It's fine. It doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter how big it is, right? And we'll call this screws, okay? And this is where, remember, we came back when we were talking about live Boolean, okay? That's what we're going to start doing here now. All right, so I want to have this start group be affected by this here, but I don't want this to affect the other start groups above it. Okay, so that's why there's this start group, that's this pill with that nano, and now I've got this start group with this. And the reason why I am doing this little piece like this is now what I want to do is, let's say, all right, let's do it on both sides. So let's do symmetry on the Z. So I'm on either side of what I'm trying to create, right? And then I'm going to go to, let's say, brush, insert, okay? And I'm going to say, let's grab this IMM Boolean. Let's see what we have here. Maybe this would look good, right? So then now I'm going to draw this out, and then this is what we get, okay? But what I'm going to do is switch this to a negative, and then now that's what we get. And then I can continue, right, to manipulate and change how this is looking, right? This is now using live Boolean in the sense of, well, do I want that? Maybe you guys would prefer this, right? And then I can rotate it. Maybe I want that look, right? And then maybe size it up a little bit more. Maybe I want that. I kind of like that, actually. Happy mistake. There, right? And then I can adjust, again, what I want this to look like on the surface, right? So what this is doing is we are using live Booleans to create a negative, right? So now I could swap. If I turn to Gizmo, I can swap to anything here, whatever I wanted to use here. We can use something like that. We can use something like this, right? And some of these are just pushed in too far. There's a little handle. I don't know why you'd want a handle, but it's a lot of fun to just sit here and cycle through things to see what you get. Let's see what this one looks like. Let's pull it out more. That's pretty cool. I kind of like the first one though, eh? this one. I kind of like what this one was doing. Right, so let's pull this out more, and then let's go back. I liked it rotated like this. That looked pretty cool. I kind of like that. That's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm happy with that. So the process here with me is I am just looking at using this mesh, in essence, to automatically, when I draw out, I have a negative capability. Right? And so we're going to throw a ZBrush logo on here now, okay, to keep spicing this up a lot. Okay? And then, of course, I would keep fixing this stuff. I would add some more elements in here, but we're running out of time, so I want to move on to other items for us here. So to create a negative, it's really easy. Okay, it's not that difficult of a thing for you guys to do for sure. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I want to first show, if I want to put a logo on this, okay, I want to show this technique as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this vector shape, right? And I'm going to say new SVG, and I'm going to load the Z-Man, which is the ZBrush logo. There he is. He's beautiful. Just beautiful, right? And then now I can resize him if I want, right? So I can resize this down. Maybe I want to put it here. I want it to go here. Maybe go a little bit smaller. Something like this. This is where I want it, like that. Let's go a little bit smaller. Something like this, right? And this now, I want it to be a little bit more centered to his head, like that. So now we have something like this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this mesh, I'm going to rename it Z-Man. Okay, I got that Z-Man there. Let's duplicate that. Okay, let's switch to our handy dandy gizmo. In fact, first let's switch again to this, right, and switch to our gizmo. And I want to replace, obviously, this man now with a cylinder, right? So now I've got a cylinder to manipulate and say, I'm going to have this guy sitting in some kind of little round, little crest item or something like that. So, oops, we'll make it a little bit bigger, right? And do something that looks good. I don't want it this thick right now. So we'll do something like this. All right, let's take a look at what we have here for geometry. And let's just look at solo mode, and let's just focus on this item. I'm going to switch to ZModeler. And I'm going to say, let's do an insert a single edge. And I'm going to say I want there. Let's do that. Let's do an edge there and an edge there. Right? And then I'm going to QMesh polyloop. I'm going to pull this out. Assign new polygroups, and then give me this one to do that. So when I smooth, I get something like this. And then now if I'm coming out of solo mode, we see how the Z-Man is working with that. So I want him to be smaller, right? Like that. And you know what? I want to add a little bit of bevel to the Z-Man. Okay, so I'm just looking at this Z-Man and I'm adding a bevel like that. So I want a little bit of bevel to him, maybe a little bit more resolution, right? So it just smooths up portions of him. I'm pretty happy with that. You can actually absolutely extrude more, which I'm going to show you why I might want to do something like that. Right, so it reset because the plugin, okay, goes back to looking at the mesh where it was. So now I'll size this down real quick and say that looks good. I like having that soft beveling, and I can say, do I want it raised this much? In essence, how much do I want this raised? Okay, so maybe do something like that. Right, now what I want to do is now manipulate and move this little portion here. So I'm going to switch to the gizmo, and I'm going to turn on this icon right here. And I'm going to select out only these two subtools. So I'm just holding Control Shift to select, and now what I can do is move these as kind of like a group, because maybe I want it to sit there. And now it looks like the whole thing I want to size down and be more like that. Okay? And I even want to maybe now say, okay, that's good. I'm happy with that. Okay? But I want that to come off this a little bit. Right? So looking at this, let's turn on our poly grouping here. So let's look at just this disk here. And all I want to do is take this part right here, and I'm just going to push it back. Right? So it creates, in essence, what I'm trying to do here. Right? I'm just trying to make it collide with that back piece. Right? So you have this now happening. So then this is what that crest would look like, something like this. Right? And then again, if I want to adjust this, I go back now to this, turn on this last icon, and let's center it, and I can say, how far do I want this to stick out? There's a point where it's going to intersect with the logo. See, starting to intersect. So that's about as close I can get it, but maybe that's the dial that I want. I want something like that. Right, now we've got that happening. But maybe you guys want to do now another start group here. Let's see what it looks like. What if we put the Z-Man below, make a new start group, and make the Z-Man be a cut? And now that's cutting into the surface instead, right? Instead of being a raised surface, it's cutting into the surface, right? And then, of course, I can adjust this any way that I want, right? And start making different cuts happening. Okay, so this is the beauty of even something like live Boolean. I can say, do I prefer that or do I prefer that? I prefer that because it's sticking out a little bit. Really, the logo pops a lot better this way. Okay, I'm gonna hit my third button again. And now I just continue this process as we go along here. Okay, and now I just keep working on what I want items to do and what items not to do, and keep going along the way here, right? So that's pretty much it. I unfortunately have to go today, so I gotta do some other items, meetings for myself, unfortunately, right? And then now I can center this. Now I'm just like looking at my overall design and seeing what that looks like and what I like and what I don't like in here. You know, I'm creating something like this. I could put the Z-Man logo up there if I wanted to as well, or put Pixel Logic across the top as well. Okay, so here's just a bunch of different things, and I agree with the person that already said it like 30 minutes ago. These holes are too small. I'd probably go a lot bigger with the holes on these as well. It's a little bit too tiny. Go a little bit bigger. All right, so I wasn't able to keep up with all the questions. Was there something I missed that you guys want to drop back in here? A lot with watch again. Just read them. Just catching up. Okay, so any last minute questions we have here? So I'm going to finish this up, and we might use it in some kind of little special item down the road, possibly. But I'm just having some fun with this right now, figuring out what I want to do. You know, I would actually, looking at this, I'd probably want to make the microphone even higher as well. So I'd probably redo this portion. Okay, but there you go. That's a way for you to start making something like this. And I was trying to show as many little techniques as possible for you to do what you want to do. So thank you again for tuning in. Right, I really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys learned a bunch of stuff. Looks like I'm all caught up on any questions. Looks like you guys are just having conversations amongst yourself, which is awesome. That's the point of this too, is you guys to communicate with each other. So I got to finish this up, and move on to the next little project that we're doing. Okay, so again, thank you for tuning in. See you next time in the next stream. I'm every 2 weeks for Did You Know That? So this just came up in the office, and I'm like, hey, let's do this for the Did You Know That, since it was a Did You Know That from the staff here. So a lot of fun. Thank you again for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And please, please share your work with the community. Everyone loves to see what people are doing, so don't hesitate to share all your work. All right, have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.